First of all, there are three main forms of a verb. The simple present, I go to school every day, or he goes with an ES to school every day. Simple past, I went to the gym yesterday. And the past participle, I have gone to the store already. We use the past participle with a form of the verb have. You will always see the past participle with has or have or had. The past participle is sometimes the same as the simple past form. But when the verb is irregular, it's different, like with go, went and gone. Now your turn. In simple present, it's I do my homework in the evenings. So what are the answers for simple past and the past participle? If you don't know, look in your book. Okay, this should be very easy. The answers are, I did my homework yesterday evening, and I have done my homework already. Now we're going to talk about the present perfect. This is a verb tense that describes past actions. Even though it's called the present perfect, it's about events in the past. Always about events in the past. Now, I introduced the past participle because you will need it to create the present perfect. The present perfect has two possible meanings. One, it could describe an event that started in the past and is still happening now. It hasn't finished yet. The present perfect can also describe an event that happened in the past and it's finished, but we simply don't know when it happened in the past. You need to use has or have plus the past participle. This is why it's the present perfect. It's a present form of the verb have, and then perfect means use the past participle. Some examples. I have seen that movie many times. Have plus the past participle of the verb see, seen. She has known him for 3 months. Has plus the past participle of the verb know. You do the next one. What is the correct answer? If this was your choice, good job. He has been to the restaurant before. Very easy. Now, when you use present perfect for meaning number 1, let's go back. Do you remember meaning number 1? An event that began in the past and continues to the present. That's what we're going to talk about first. In that case, almost always, we use since or for. We use since with a specific date, and we use for with a length of time. Let me show you. Since. She has known him since November. Specific time, November. For. She has known him for 3 months. Length of time, 3 months. You do the next one. Fill in the correct form of the verb and choose since or for. Let's look at the answers. They have lived in Norfolk for 1 year because it's a length of time. They have lived in Norfolk since January 2012. That's a specific date, so we use since. Now, for practice, please turn to your book and do exercise 5 on page 84 and exercise 7 on page 85. The present perfect progressive. To learn more about this verb tense, you should look in your textbook. Read charts 4.6 and 4.7. Chart 4.6 will give you an explanation of the verb tense. Chart 4.7 will explain how the present perfect progressive is different from the present perfect. You will also need to read chart 1.6 back in chapter 1 on page 17 for an explanation of non-progressive verbs. First, what is the present perfect progressive? It's a verb tense that describes events that began in the past and continue to the present. For instance, I have been looking for my wallet for 20 minutes. I began looking for my wallet 20 minutes ago in the past, and I am still looking for my wallet now. Present perfect progressive. Next example. Susan has been working at the company since 1998. She began working at the company in 1998, and she still works at the company now. As you can see, we use either has or have plus been plus the ing form of the verb, and we almost always use since or for. You might have noticed that this verb tense seems very similar to the present perfect, and it is. I will explain the difference between these two verb tenses in just a minute. First, let's do some practice. Read the following sentences and fill in the blanks with the present perfect progressive form of the verb in parentheses. Let's look at our answers. First one. What have you been doing for the past hour? To make a question, it's just the same as the present perfect. We just take the has or have auxiliary verb and place it in front of the subject. What have you been doing, as opposed to what you have been doing. Next one. I have been checking Facebook. Have plus been plus the ing form of the verb. And finally, she has been driving since 2 o'clock. Notice how driving is spelled? We drop the E and add ing. Now, what's the difference between the two tenses? In many ways, the present perfect and the present perfect progressive are very, very similar, but they cannot always be used exactly the same. Sometimes it doesn't matter which verb tense you use. Both verb tenses can refer to an event that began in the past but continues to the present. Look at the two examples. I have lived in Norfolk for 1 year. I have been living in Norfolk for 1 year. Both sentences are correct. The meaning is not different. They mean exactly the same thing. It does not matter which tense you use. Both mean that this person still lives in Norfolk. Now let's look at how they're different. The present perfect only can refer to an event that happened at a non-specific time in the past. Do you remember that the present perfect has two meanings? We learned the first meaning, which is exactly like the present perfect progressive, but the present perfect also has a second meaning, and that is nothing like the present perfect progressive. It is completely different. Look at the examples. I have already taken a shower. In this sentence, it's an event that happened in the past. It was finished in the past. It is no longer happening. The only thing is we don't know when it happened. That's when we use the present perfect. We would not say, I have already been taking a shower. That does not work. So when you see those adverbs, already, yet, before, many times, the ones I discussed earlier, then you know that you need to use present perfect and not present perfect progressive. Now the present perfect progressive can only be used, usually, with most action verbs. So for instance, I have been talking to my sister for an hour. That's correct, but you would not say, I have talked to my sister for an hour. Now, you're probably wondering why, and there's not a good reason why that second sentence is wrong, but in general, verbs that describe an action need to use the present perfect progressive. Let me show you a few more examples in a minute. Let's look at non-progressive verbs. This is when you need to go back to your textbook, page 17, and read chart 1.6 about non-action verbs. There are some verbs that cannot be used with ing. If that is the case, then you have to use the present perfect. You cannot use the present perfect progressive. If, on the other hand, you can use ing with the verb, then you should use ing with the verb. Let's look at the examples. In simple present, you would say, I know David, but you would not say, I am knowing David, right? You can't use ing with the verb know. Look at the third sentence. I have known David since 2011. Do we still know each other? Yes, of course we do. But I would not say, I have been knowing David since 2011. That's because I can't use ing with the verb know. It's a non-progressive verb. You need to study the chart on page 17 so that you will know which verbs take ing and which verbs don't. Let's try some examples. For these sentences, you need to decide, should you use the present perfect or the present perfect progressive form of the verb? Let's look at the answers. For the first two sentences, Daniel has already eaten breakfast. This is a case where we have an event that happened in the past and it's finished. He is not eating breakfast right now. He already ate breakfast in the past. The thing is, we don't know when he ate breakfast, so we use the present perfect, has eaten. On the other hand, the second sentence takes place over a length of time, and it is still happening. Daniel has been eating breakfast for 20 minutes. That action began 20 minutes ago, and it is still happening right now in the present. So we need to use the present perfect progressive. And because this is an action verb, and we can use ing with action verbs, then we should use ing, and we should not use the present perfect here. Let's look at the second set of sentences. Grace hasn't finished her homework yet. Did you remember yet? We can only use yet with questions and negative sentences, so you need to add not to your sentence. Also remember, yet is like already. It's an adverb that we use with the present perfect, so we can't use the present perfect progressive here. On the other hand, we have, Grace has been working on her homework since 7 p.m. She began working on her homework at 7 p.m., and she is still working on it now. The present perfect progressive is a little tricky. It's often hard to tell the difference between the present perfect progressive and the present perfect. But these exercises in your textbook should help you understand the difference. Please do exercise 29 on page 99 and exercise 33 on page 102 for homework. Present perfect versus the simple past. You can find more information on the ideas that I discuss in this video in your textbook. Read chart 4.4 on page 90 and chart 4.5 on page 94. First, let's review the present perfect. It has two meanings. The first meaning we have already discussed. It can refer to an event that began in the past and still happens now in the present. In that case, you need to use since or for. For instance, I have worn glasses since I was 9 years old. I still wear glasses now. The present perfect can also refer to an event that happened at a non-specific time in the past. That means we don't know exactly when it happened. In that case, you will probably use words like already or yet, many times, before. These are just examples of some of the adverbs that you might use in a sentence with the present perfect. For instance, I have already seen that movie. We don't know when I saw the movie. If I told you when, for instance, yesterday, then we would use the simple past. But since we don't know, we use the present perfect. Let's talk about adverbs with the present perfect. Here are some common adverbs that we use with the present perfect. First of all, just and recently. Of course, just and recently refer to things that happened very soon. You just finished this, meaning maybe only a few minutes ago. This is not a long time ago. This is in the very near past. I have just finished that book. It was really good. My mother has recently been to New York. Perhaps she went to New York last week. If she went to New York last year, that's not so recent, so I wouldn't use that adverb. For both of these adverbs, notice that it comes in between the verb. I have just finished. My mother has recently been. You cannot put the adverb anywhere else in the sentence. We also use adverbs to talk about how many times we've done something. Adverbs like many times, once, twice, 3 times. So we would say, the teacher has explained the lesson many times. Now notice that this is different. Many times goes at the end of the sentence. It does not go in between the verbs. Next we have already. We can say, we have already been to the store, where already goes in between the verbs. Or we can say, we have been to the store already, where already is at the end of the sentence. Both are correct. Finally, we have yet. Now yet is an interesting adverb because we can only use the word yet in questions and in negative sentences. Let me repeat that. You can only use the word yet in questions and negative sentences. It has the same meaning as already, but we use already in positive sentences, like we have already been to the store. But if we wanted to make that a negative sentence, we would use yet. We haven't been to the store yet. Yet also always comes at the end of the sentence. Look at the examples. Have you eaten lunch yet? If the answer was yes, you would use already. Yes, I have already eaten lunch. Or, yes, I have eaten lunch already. But if the answer is no, then you use yet. No, I haven't eaten lunch yet. And once again, it comes at the end of the sentence. Now, the present perfect versus the simple past. What's the difference? The simple past refers to events that happened at a very specific time in the past. We know when the event happened. For instance, he went to bed 3 hours ago. When did he go to bed? 3 hours ago. We can answer that question. On the other hand, the present perfect refers to events that occurred at a time in the past, but we don't know when that time is. For instance, he has already gone to bed. When did he go to bed? We don't know. Perhaps 3 hours ago, perhaps 3 minutes ago. We don't know. Now it's your turn. Read the sentences and fill in the blanks with the correct form of the verb in parentheses. Let's look at the answers. For the first one, my sister lived in New York for 2 years, but she doesn't live there anymore. Notice that you see here the expression for 2 years. That does indicate a length of time, and a lot of times with since and for, we use present perfect. But that's only when the action began in the past and is still happening now. My sister doesn't live in New York anymore, so we use the simple past. We also have a specific time, for 2 years, so we use the simple past and not the present perfect because we know when it happened. For the question, we ask, have you read his new book yet? It's so exciting. Notice that yet comes at the end of the question. And the answer, no, I haven't read the book yet. Once again, yet comes at the end of the sentence. For practice, turn to page 92 in your book and do exercise 18, and then page 95 and do exercise 24. The present perfect. To find out more information about this verb tense, turn in your textbook to Chart 3.1 on page 38 and Chart 3.3 on page 43. Chart 3.1 will give you an overview of the present perfect tense, and Chart 3.3 will explain the differences between the present perfect and the simple past. The present perfect, in general, has 3 different possible meanings. Let's look at the first one now. The present perfect can describe an event that began in the past and continues to the present. In these cases, it is usually used with since or for. Look at the 2 sentences below. I have lived in Norfolk since 2011, or I have lived in Norfolk for 1 year. In both cases, the speaker has lived in Norfolk for a certain period of time and still lives in Norfolk now. This has not changed. This is still true in the present, even though it began in the past. Notice how you form the present perfect. It's has or have plus the past participle. Now, what's the difference between since and for? Since we use with a specific time, like 2011, or yesterday, or 1 month ago, or at 2 p.m. For, on the other hand, we use with a length of time, like for 1 year, for 2 months, for 3 days, any length of time. The present perfect can also be used to describe events that happened repeatedly in the past until now, and we can safely assume that these events will continue to happen in the future. They will probably occur again. In these cases, we often use so far. Look at the sentence below. We've taken 2 quizzes so far in Ashley's class. We formed the present perfect by using have plus the past participle of the verb take, taken. And we use so far. What does this sentence mean? It means that in the past we took 2 quizzes, and we will probably take more quizzes in Ashley's class. We're not taking a quiz right now, but we're also probably not finished with this event. It will probably happen again. Second sentence. She has had 2 glasses of wine, since she arrived at the party. Has plus the past participle of the verb have, which is had. And of course what this sentence means is, in the past, she drank 2 glasses of wine. She's not necessarily drinking a glass of wine right now, but she probably will drink another glass of wine before the party is over. We assume that she will continue to drink. This event is not finished. Finally, the present perfect can also describe past events that occurred at an unspecified time. We don't know when in the past the event occurred. It is finished. It's not going to continue to the present. It's not going to repeat itself. We simply don't know when in the past this event occurred. In these cases, we often use adverbs like already, yet, ever, never, and adverbs of frequency like once or twice or seldom or recently. Look at the example. I've already finished my homework. Again, have plus the past participle of the verb finish. All we know is that the speaker has finished her homework. We don't know when she finished her homework. She might have finished her homework 2 minutes ago. She might have finished her homework 2 hours ago. We don't know when, we only know that it happened sometime in the past. A few rules to remember with adverbs. Yet can only be used with negative sentences and questions, and it always comes at the end of the sentence. Already can only be used in positive sentences, like the example above, I've already finished my homework, and ever is only used with questions. Now let's look at question forms and short answers with the present perfect. To make a question with the present perfect is quite simple. All you have to do is bring the auxiliary verb have to the front of the sentence, in front of the subject. Have you ever been to Mexico? Or, has she ever been to Mexico? Quite simple. Then you can give a short answer, which is simply, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. If it was a singular subject, a third-person singular subject, it would be, yes, she has, or no, she hasn't. It's that simple. Now let's compare the present perfect to the simple past. Both verb tenses describe events that happened in the past, but they cannot be used in the same way. So what are the main differences? Well, first of all, if you're talking about an event that began in the past and ended in the past, it is completely finished. Then you might use the simple past, or you might use the present perfect. It depends. Both tenses can refer to events that began and ended in the past. If you know when the event happened, it happened yesterday, it happened 2 hours ago, it happened last year, then you would use the simple past. If you don't know when the event happened, it happened already, it hasn't happened yet, it never happened, it happened once, it happened several times, then you use the present perfect. When you're talking about events that began in the past and continue to the present, they're still happening now, then you can only use the present perfect. You can never use the simple past for those events. Now it's your turn. Read the sentences and decide whether you should use the present perfect or the simple past. Let's look at the answers. For the first one, I have been tired since yesterday. We use the present perfect. Why? Because of since. We can assume that this person is still tired. This event is not finished yet. It began in the past, but it is still happening now. Therefore, present perfect. And we use since and not for because we have a specific time, yesterday. For the next one, has she ever ridden a bicycle? No, she hasn't. We use the present perfect. Why do we use the present perfect here? Because we don't know when in the past this happened. We're talking generally, and as you'll notice, we have the adverb ever in this case. When you see ever, you're going to use the present perfect. And of course, we have the short answer, which is very easy. No, she hasn't. We have seen this movie 6 times already. Present perfect again. Why? Because we don't know when they saw the movie. We know that they saw it already in the past 6 times, but we don't know when those 6 times are. So we can't use the simple past. My wife and I fought about the bills this morning. Fought. Simple past. Why? Because of this morning. We know when this event happened. It's not still happening now. It's finished and done, and we know when it happened. Simple past. Finally, they have flown to New York many times. Present perfect. Why? It's the same as the sentence about the movie. We've seen the movie 6 times. They've flown to New York many times. It happened in the past, but we don't know when, so we use the present perfect. For more practice, turn to your book and do exercise 4 on page 39 and exercise 13 on page 44.
Present perfect versus past perfect from espressoenglish.net. Both the present perfect and the past perfect talk about something that happened before a point in time, called the reference point. In the present perfect, our reference point is the present, and in the past perfect, our reference point is in the past. Let's look at some examples. Present perfect. I have been to Japan twice. You can see that our reference point is the present, and the 2 trips to Japan are in the past. We don't know exactly when, but they happened before the reference point, before the present. Past perfect. I had been to Japan twice by the time I was 10 years old. In this case, our reference point is in the past. I am 28 years old in the present, and in the past I was 10 years old. The 2 trips to Japan happened before I was 10 years old, before the reference point in the past. Here's another example. My husband has already eaten breakfast. It means that he has eaten breakfast sometime in the past, before the present moment, which is our reference point. Now look at an example in the past perfect. When I woke up, I saw that my husband had already eaten breakfast. The reference point is now the moment in the past when I woke up, and my husband had eaten breakfast before this reference point in the past. You can form the present perfect with have or has plus the past participle. I have been. He has eaten. Form the past perfect with had plus the past participle. I had been. He had eaten. In spoken English, it's very common to use the short form. In the present perfect, I've been and he's eaten. And in the past perfect, I'd been and he'd eaten. For a fast way to improve your English grammar and vocabulary, get the ebook 100 Common Errors in English, available at espressoenglish.net. Thanks for watching English Tips from Espresso English. If you liked this video, please share it.